This video covers psychological development from a toddler to the end of childhood and the beginning of adolescence, which will be the topic of the next video. My name is Jouni Vilkka and this is my channel, TFF, Teacher from Finland. Don't forget to subscribe and click the thumbs up button. Toddlers have been studied using the strange situation experiment developed by Mary Ainsworth. I discussed it earlier, so here it suffices to say that the purpose of the experiment is to analyze the child's interactions and other behavior related to the mother leaving them alone with a stranger. This allows the researcher to assess the attachment style of the child to the mother. Different attachment styles then seem to affect the psychological development of the child into an adult. Everett Waters and Kathleen Deane developed a new method to study attachment because they wanted to avoid the stress caused by the strange situation to the baby or toddler. Theirs is called the attachment cue set method, or AQS for short. It is based on natural observation at the child's home or place of daycare. The set mentioned in the name is a list of 90 statements. The researcher observes the interaction between the child and the caregiver for 2 hours, selecting the true or false conditions of each statement. Regardless of the method used to study attachment, it seems that the best type of parenting is sensitive to the needs of the child, which allows a basic sense of security and trust to develop in the child. This is associated with the best outcomes later in life. Toddlers can recognize themselves in a mirror at the age of 18 months. By 2 or 3 years, they will also be able to recognize themselves in photographs. By the same age, they have developed self-concept. They will enjoy playing alongside other children, called parallel playing, but don't want to share toys. They are very interested in learning gender roles at this age as well. One really interesting phenomenon is childhood amnesia. It refers to the fact that most people have no accurate recollections of events before their 3rd or 4th year. This may be caused by the development of their brain areas, memory skills, and/or language. Memories from before these developments may be removed by the changes, or might not really exist, at least not very firmly, in the first place. After all, we typically use language to structure our memories, but before we have acquired the required competence in a language, it is difficult to even form lasting memories. As toddlers are turning into proper children, their development displays fascinatingly rapid improvements in skills. For example, a 2-year-old has just learned to walk down or up stairs without help, but after a year more they can already climb trees and ride a kick bike. A bike with no pedals, which is probably a better starter bike than a bicycle with training wheels. Another year later they can catch balls, and at 5 they can use a swing on their own. At 2 they only started using words, but at 4 they can already sing songs from their own memory. A year later they'll already use proper sentences. They may even be a bit precocious, using phrases you would only expect to hear adults use, until you realize they learned those phrases from you. Probably the most important skill a child has to learn is speech. The critical period of learning a language, any language, which could be a sign language just as well as a spoken one, begins very early and lasts to about age 5. If they don't get enough exposure to a language to learn it during this period, their brains will never develop properly to truly acquire a language. There are also sensitive periods when learning things is far easier than at other times. It is easiest to learn a new language before age 7, and from then on it gets more and more difficult. Not impossible though. It is still useful to learn new languages even at old age because of the intellectual stimuli the process provides. In the past, it was thought that growing up as bilingual would be somehow bad for the child, that they wouldn't learn either language well. That view has been discarded, although researchers have found interesting details regarding what kinds of languages are used and whether they are learned at the same time or consecutively. In some cases, learning two languages can delay language learning a bit, but that is hardly significant, especially considering the benefits of knowing more than one language. Besides the usefulness of knowing languages in everyday life, people who grew up bilingual also seem to have better cognitive reserves than monolingual people. It means that their brains have more resilience to damage, for example, in old age when they begin to deteriorate. Bilingual people can withstand more damage before losing the ability to function effectively. Emotion regulation develops a lot from infancy, when babies just express their emotions immediately without any filters. Toward teenage, when children already have learned to adjust their expressions of emotions to different situations and to assess and anticipate the influence of expressions of emotions on others. They are not limited to external methods of controlling their emotions, like the help of adults or safety blankets, as young children are. Instead, they have learned to use internal methods, like focusing their thoughts on different things and reassessing the situation. They can more effectively and intentionally even influence the emotions of others. Giménez-Dasí, Pons and Bender looked into the influence of imaginary friends on the development of emotional intelligence and theory of mind. The study was correlational and cross-sectional, so they couldn't demonstrate that having an imaginary friend caused the effects discovered. Still, it seems, according to their findings, that having an imaginary friend provides children an opportunity to practice social skills like recognizing emotions and understanding how others think. Some people have thought that imaginary friends are adopted because the child can't make real friends, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The kids who had imaginary friends were, on average, better at recognizing emotions and did better at a task requiring the theory of mind than those who did not have imaginary friends. What the study did not explain is why some kids have imaginary friends while others do not. By age 6, children form a group identity, understanding also that there are other groups. When they go to school, they will be able to describe themselves, their own traits, and what they like, for example. In school, they also begin to compare themselves to other kids, and their self-image will become more realistic as a result. They might have experiences of competence, or the opposite. If the experiences repeat in an unbalanced way, this can clearly lead to different kinds of self-image. The way parents treat and raise their children will have a lasting effect on how they will turn out as adults. If the parents are uninvolved or too permissive in their parenting styles, the outcomes will, on average, be less than ideal. An authoritarian style is also not very good. An authoritative, firm but loving parenting style seems most beneficial. It will help the children form a positive self-image. The cognitive skills of school children, of course, improve. Probably not just because of school, although I'm sure school helps. The fundamental causes, or at least enabling factors of this, are still probably in the biological development of the central nervous system. During middle childhood, about age 7 to 12, the different parts of the brain adapt and improve their cooperation, which can be observed in the synchronization of their electrical functioning. At this age, children become more logical and they can deal with concrete information in an organized manner. They understand concepts of time, such as the past and the future, and are able to actually set goals and plan how to achieve those goals. They can learn mathematics and other complex ideas, as well as explanations in terms of cause and effect. They still have poor attention spans until about age 11. From that point on, it improves until adulthood. Well, unless watching short videos and other social media on the mobile phones ruins that development. One of the most important skills is selective attention, or focus. It is made possible by the development of the frontal cortex. It is the ability to ignore irrelevant sensory stimuli while focusing on the important. It is clearly necessary for learning in a classroom full of children, whether by listening to the teacher or searching for information in a book or online. Another important skill, or set of skills, has to do with metacognition. It means being aware of one's own cognitions, the ability to learn, deduce, remember, and so on. As children mature, these metacognitive skills improve. Preschoolers overestimate their ability to remember a list of words, while 9-year-olds are already pretty good at estimating their own ability at such tasks. Learning to structure our knowledge and to use our cognitive and metacognitive skills is something school already helps with, but also something we can practice and improve for the rest of our lives. The development of cognitive skills is obviously dependent on the development of the brain. The brain is what does all the cognitive processing, after all. The volume of the brain grows by 10% between ages 7 and 16. Myelination of the axons of the neurons is important because it improves the speed of the signaling and thus the spread of activations in the brain. Myelin is the white matter in the brain. The gray matter is the nerve cells, also known as neurons. Despite the strengthening of connections between neurons, as unneeded connections are pruned out to also enhance the functioning of the brain, the amount of gray matter is reduced. This means that the development of the brain is very concrete. Walter Mischel and his team conducted an experiment in the early 1970s to explain why some kids do better in school than others. This is called the marshmallow test. Play-age kids between 3 and 6 years were brought into a boring little room where the researcher would put a marshmallow on the table for the child. But before giving it to the child, he would tell them that if, and only if, they wait for 15 minutes while the researcher is away, without eating the marshmallow in the meantime, they will get 2 marshmallows when the researcher returns. About a third of the kids did wait, while others did not. The method the kids used to resist the temptation and abstain from eating the candy were pretty interesting. Directing their attention to other activities like singing, using their hands to cover their eyes so they wouldn't see the marshmallow, and so on. Older kids were able to resist longer than younger ones, as anyone would expect. There was a follow-up on all participants years afterwards. It was found that the kids who had been able to resist the temptation had been able to attend university and, in general, were doing better in life than the others. The conclusion was that they had more self-discipline or impulse control in the psychological lingo, and this helped them in life in general. The marshmallow study has been criticized for failing to account for the different life circumstances of the children and how that affects the results. Kids from poorer backgrounds or of unreliable parents may have had good reason not to wait for a promised candy. They might have good reason not to trust the scientists, and they may well have experienced situations where they did not get what had been promised. The children of well-off parents, on the other hand, would benefit from their parents in several aspects of their lives. They would have more social capital, such as the networks and prestige of their parents. That has a lot to do with getting into prestigious schools and being economically successful in life. That said, one of the results of the Dunedin longitudinal study, where New Zealanders from Dunedin have been followed since their birth in 1973, is that at age 3, the best predictor of mental and physical well-being in middle age was good self-control. That is, little kids with good ability in inhibition and executive function in general grew up to be mentally and physically well in middle age. The Jyväskylä longitudinal study of personality and social development, JYLS, started in 1968 with 8-year-old subjects, has come up with similar results. How well kids do at school is affected by many things. Some toddlers at 3 already get spontaneously interested in numbers and consequently get a lot more practice than the average in mathematics by the time they start school. In Finland, half of the kids starting school, the year they turn 7, already know the letters, and 1/3 can even read a little. Meanwhile, 11% have reading difficulties, and half of them will continue to have problems, perhaps for the rest of their lives. There are genetic reasons for at least some of these problems, but there are methods to help overcome them. These kinds of differences in where they start are likely to affect children at school, but also the expectations, such as gender roles, may influence how much support they get from their parents. The general atmosphere at school is also important, and especially sensitive and shy children will not flourish among large groups of students. Motivation is probably the single most important factor for school achievement or learning in general, so finding what one or one's child finds interesting is important. One annoying and harmful aspect of modern schooling is that popularity, status among peers, becomes a significant thing. This is mostly bad in case someone gets bullied, for example excluded from the group, or worse. In a Finnish study by Tuija Huuki, the majority of the kids, I guess they could be called normies, didn't care much about popularity and didn't try to achieve that. Some do though, and it is fairly common for them to try to abuse their power to put others down in order to achieve a higher status. School kids tend to have strict norms about gender and sexuality, and those conforming well to such expectations easily rise in the hierarchy, while those intelligent enough to oppose and criticize them are likely to be picked on. In my opinion, which I already formed as a kid at school, there is something fundamentally wrong in the way modern societies store kids in kindergartens and schools, where they are mostly herded as groups of animals, forced to socialize with others of their own age. Yes, there are teachers, but kids often see teachers as representatives of the authorities who are forcing the kids into the oppressed situation. Often, even the physical environment they are forced to occupy is depressing and stifling. The main problem here is that children learn a lot by observing others, and the examples available to them are other children, not well-adjusted, wise adults. Even if some teachers are like that, the classroom only has one of them, and far too many children, many of whom come from challenging situations at home. That's enough of childhood and my opinions about schools, for now at least. The next video will be about adolescence. See you then, and bye for now. If you wish to support my channel, please click thumbs up, subscribe and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome.